What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Hoops with Kev Luke. As always, I'm wishing you guys the best. Wish you guys a blessed rest of your summer. Have a great fall. You guys be good out there. Stay safe. Continue to do your thing. College basketball is creeping around the corner, and today we have a very, very special episode for two different reasons. One, I got to shout out to Center Hub Magazine for giving me this opportunity. We got the magazine on the way. We'll be releasing in October, so definitely be on the lookout for that as we preview all the college basketball, all the conferences, all 360 plus teams. But the second reason is I have a special, special guest out of the state of Virginia currently right now. He is the latest and newest head coach of the Radford Highlander men's basketball program. He is the ninth coach in the program's history. Coach Chu, welcome to the show, and how are you doing?
Hey, Kev. Appreciate it. Yep, doing well. Doing well. First week of school, so
Okay, yeah,
everyone's
so
figuring something out this week. So
so we just talked about it a little bit, but I got to ask you about your coaching journey. I mean, you started off out here, or I guess out here in the
yeah,
NBA with the Clippers. Then you went and you were part of the Texas Legends, which has been a successful G League team for the NBA. You were with the Dallas Mavericks. You were with the Pacers. And this past season, you were with the SMU Mustangs in the ACC with Coach Enfield as a chief strategist. What is the most gratifying part about your journey? And how has basketball impacted you every step of the way in your life?
yeah. I'm from Dallas, so the last year was a special experience to get to go home. I grew up an SMU fan, um, and small world. My I grew up an SMU fan, and I interviewed for this job and found out my AD was on the bench all those years that I was going to those games. He was actually an assistant coach, and also the interim head coach, um, in the early 2000s at SMU. But um, yeah, all I think over time, like just through all the experiences I've had, I think looking back at it, you just appreciate all the relationships that you've gotten to make, all the relationships with players, but also uh, colleagues, and just the network is something that is really special to me.
Yeah, and you've been around some great basketball minds, so I'd be remiss not to ask you about learning under Coach Carlisle, right? We just seen him lead the Pacers to the NBA Finals. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you learned from him and that you took away from him on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. I think I was lucky. I think I have always been super fortunate to surround myself with um, not only really good coaches, but really good people. And Coach Carlisle was super great to me, and there was certainly alignment working with him in terms of style of play, similar style of play that I was taught when I played at Richmond to the style of play that we wanted to use and play with in Dallas, and also apply when we went to Indiana. And that is obviously, to play with pace, to play in a really free flowing, what he often refers to as sort of a random offense, where you're presenting random and unpredictable situations to the defense. Um, I'd say on top of that, I think I learned from him how to align an unselfish style of play with your overall culture, especially now, especially in a time where the college landscape is changing, and at a time where it especially has impacted college basketball. It is more important now than ever, in my opinion, to value high character players, really high quality kids. And I think um, to align a style of play that rewards the pass, rewards unselfish play and natural instincts, um, in terms of just knowing how to play the right way, to reward those things is ultimately the best way to align with the roster construction process now, in terms of the kind of people you want. I think we strived here to put together a roster. We have 13 new players on our roster out of the 14. We put a roster together here of hungry, high character kids that we believe we can help them achieve all of their individual long-term goals.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So as we transition, I gotta ask, what made you not only continue to want to be a college basketball head coach or continue to be a head coach, period, at the college basketball level, and what made you jump at the opportunity at Radford?
Well, when I was working in Indiana, we were coming off a really great year. The 3 years I was there, we started, um, it was a very quick rebuild, so to speak. We won 25 games my first year, and pretty quickly identified that there were some changes that needed to be made. We made some trades, had a couple of really good draft picks, and my last year there, made the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to the Boston Celtics. And so I think our approach in Indiana through the rebuild was to apply an analytically sound approach, a data driven approach, um, and align it with the kind of character, the kind of players that Coach Carlisle were important to Coach Carlisle. And while the approach was, obviously was validated through our success, it became apparent to me that that sort of approach was not necessarily being used yet in college. And in a time when the transfer portal and roster change was happening at a rapid pace in college, I felt like there was a significant competitive advantage to be had applying a very similar approach that I was a part of in the NBA. Um, it's funny. I've always had quite a few friends that were coaching in college, and in the last few years, um, you just heard so many negative things about the college landscape, the changing landscape, and um, in some ways, I realized that was probably the right time to go in. So
Yeah, no, that's super dope. I think that's a great thing. Again, you hear about all the negatives, right? You hear about the stuff that goes on in the background, but I think the product especially has been really good the past few years. I mean, you look at the Final Four this past year, I thought was amazing. National championship game, little to the hype. So yeah, I try not to go too deep into everything that goes on in the background because it just doesn't really concern me. But overall, I don't think the style of play and the gameplay as a whole has really been bad at all. I think it's actually improved, because everybody's getting talent, right? It's not just the blue bloods getting talent, it's everybody's talent is going everywhere, right? So I
yeah,
think that's an amazing thing. And of course, you guys got a lot of talent that we're going to touch on in a minute, but I got to ask you, as a coach, how do you balance the in-game instincts with analytics?
yeah. I grew up. I played. I wasn't very good, but I played. Um, and then my dad coached actually for a few years in college. I was always, as I mentioned, very lucky to be surrounded by really good coaches. And so my background playing and coaching, I think, allowed me to, um, about 5 years ago in my professional career, when I dove into this, um, into what was a black box in coaching in a lot of ways, this analytical box. Um, I, I think I was able to I felt like I was able to complement my basketball instinct with this pretty radical, intense analytical approach that I was exposed to in Dallas. And so, working for Coach Carlisle, working for the Mavericks in the front office as well, um, felt like we were able to create what I felt like was a potentially a best practice approach in complementing those two concepts.
Yeah, amazing answer. I appreciate that. So my next question is, what goals would you say you have set for yourself and your team headed into year one coaching the Highlanders?
And I've always thought the best coaches at both levels, at all levels, are teams that play their best basketball at the end of the year, right? The teams that improve uh, substantially from their first game to their last. And we simply define success here as we want our last game to be our best performing game, our hardest playing game, and a game that we can hang our hat on. And so, quite simply, that will be our measure of success.
Yeah. So how would you describe your philosophy as a coach on both the offensive and defensive ends of the floor?
Yeah, it's a little different now in college. Like I don't think you can have. There's certainly standards, but you have to be flexible. Um, at Radford, uh, we knew we wanted to acquire the best talent we could, and that might have been a 7'5" center or a 5'8" point guard. That didn't matter. It was really acquire the talent, acquire a roster that we felt like is analytically sound. But there's multiple ways to skin a cat, for sure. And so we have developed a roster here that is, I would say, very versatile, very athletic, but in a lot of ways, very raw. There is, I'd say there's a balance between players that have shown productivity at the college level. A great example of that is Jalen Johnson, who was all OVC last year, averaged double digit scoring, over 5 assists a game. Um, was really a good player last year at Tennessee Tech. We have balanced the roster between productive players and players that we feel like were undervalued at um, high major schools. Um, a great example of that, one of the two Virginia natives that we have on our roster is Dennis Parker Jr. from NC State, who played 2 years at NC State, was on a Final Four team there, um, but played limited minutes. And so, a guy who fit our profile that we looked for analytically, but also a super high character uh, kid as well.
Yeah, so I got to ask you about your roster because I think you've had a very successful transfer portal pickup season. And I know that when you first take the job, it's kind of a whirlwind, right? You're kind of getting acclimated, trying to find a house, trying to get settled, trying to get a roster, getting a coaching staff. There's so much that goes into it. But as you mentioned, you've got transfers from the ACC, from the Big Ten, from a whole bunch of different conferences. So, how would you describe your roster so far? What have you liked so far? I know you've only seen so much, being that official practices are just getting ready to kick off, but what have you liked out of your team so far?
Yeah, I think the thing about these guys is I think we have tremendous depth. I think we're really happy with the depth we've been able to acquire, and we have very like size players. A lot of guys that are something 6'5" to 6'7", who play extremely hard and can play at a pretty good tempo. We will play very similar to the way I played at SMU under Coach Enfield and in Indiana under Coach Carlisle, and that includes really, hopefully, a tremendous pace and a great unselfishness. So.
So I got to ask you, what guys have stood out to you so far? Again, I know it's early. I know it's still, a bit of time before official games and stuff get kicked off, but what have you liked out of certain players? What have you seen? What you thinking so far? You don't got to peel too far back, but what you thinking?
Yeah, Tyson Brown is coming off a great year at Georgia Southern. Um, like everybody in this day and age, I think physical maturity is something that's obviously important. And to acquire Tyson, he is the other Virginia native on our team outside of Dennis Parker Jr. Um, we were getting him in his last year of college. He's actually 24 years old, and he shows it. He came in right away this summer, and was certainly just imposing physically. And so we're excited about having a veteran, so to speak, in the locker room as a leader and someone who can be the captain of our defense, and has always really been a very efficient offensive player who has a really great feel for how to play pick and roll.
Yeah, I mean, again, Tyson, I've seen a few of these guys. Brandon Rigsby has been a player the past few stops he's been at. Dennis Parker Jr., you touched on, has a lot of ability, I think. But overall, again, when you look at this roster, you guys, to me, are one of the more stacked rosters in the Big South. And I'm looking forward to watching you guys play and just without going too far in depth, without giving too much of your secret sauce, just what do you think this team could do in your first year at Radford?
Well, the Big South is a really interesting league right now. I mean, it's the talent gets better and better. It's trending in that direction. I know, just in terms of actual conference ranking, it's improved every year, and so we simply just want to uh, show to be competitive in this league, and obviously to put 3 games together in March is the ultimate goal, to play our best basketball at the end of the year. But we have tremendous respect for the league and understand that every game is extremely difficult, as we know about college basketball.
Yeah, and then my final question for you, Coach. Again, we appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule and your day. What would you say are some of the main things in order to get Radford back to the NCAA tournament, as you guys have not been since 2018, but it's not too long. But what would you say are some of the key things to getting you guys back there?
I think we have to leverage the identity that this team is building. Um, Again, we have some older players, as you referenced, with Tyson and Brennan Rigsby. We have a character. We have very quickly developed a connectivity amongst the group that we're really proud of. To have 14 players that had never met one another before they stepped on campus this summer, um, we certainly feel like this group has a spirit and a fight to them that can overcome the lack of college basketball experience that some of these players have, sort of the raw nature that some of these players have. We certainly feel like hard play and fight um, can take us a long ways with this team.
Yes, sir, Coach. Again, we appreciate you. Thank you for your time. We're wishing you nothing but the best in your first season and as you continue to go on throughout your coaching career. And for the rest of us, again, this has been another episode of Talking Hoops with Kev Luke. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, and share. Again, shout out to the Center Hub. Definitely look out for that magazine. We got a whole bunch of great collaborators working on that. It's going to be another amazing season for them. And again, Coach Chu, we appreciate you. Thank you. Y'all be good, stay safe, and as always, peace and love gone.